Bye, Randy Gregory. Breaking news coming down this morning. The Broncos have released Randy Gregory, and we are going to break it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast. I'm joined by Alexis Perry, Todd Davis, and I am Zach Stevens. All right, let's just jump right into it. What was your initial reaction when you saw that Randy Gregory was released, Todd?
I thought it was good for the overall team. I felt like Randy, his effort wasn't there, at least from the outside looking in. He wasn't a guy that was putting forth a lot of effort and really wasn't putting forth a lot of plays or game-changing plays, and that's why they brought him here and was going to pay him almost $70 million to do so. So I think it's good for the team. I think it shows the young guys that even if you have a starter in front of you or a guy that we paid a lot of money, if you come and make plays like Nik Bonitto, we'll move the guy in front of you to get you on the field more. So I think it's a good thing for the team to see. And I think overall guys will play better because of it.
Yeah, I think it sends a really strong message to a fairly young roster. You know, you have guys who are up and coming who know that they can make an impact if given the opportunity. And I think now Nik Bonitto and Jonathon Cooper, these are guys, with, of course, Baron Browning on his way back, Frank Clark as well. These are guys who can really start to gel and not kind of worry about that fifth guy and where he plays into all of this.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? For a lot of reasons that you guys mentioned. One, Randy Gregory was trending in the wrong direction from the moment he signed his contract. Even before he signed his contract, this was a guy that availability issues for a various number of reasons were a concern. When the Broncos signed him, do you remember there was a little delay, about a 48-hour delay from when reports were out that the Broncos were signing him to when the team actually announced? And that was a little weird. Typically, the team follows within like an hour of the news leaking. And we found out, at least what George Paton and the Broncos told us was, there were weather issues. There were no weather issues in Denver or in Texas where Gregory was. So it was like, that's weird. Then we find out a couple of days later that, Randy Gregory actually has to get surgery. And that is kind of what delayed the process initially. And so right off the bat, it got off to a rocky start. The Broncos agreed to keep the contract that they had him to because they really believed in his talent. And one of the things with Randy Gregory when the Broncos signed him is he wasn't available. You couldn't count on him playing all 17 games because he never had. But the other thing was the talent is like, he's a freak of an athlete. Yeah. He is as big as you want him to be. He's as athletic as you want him to be. He would have been like a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft if he didn't have off the field concerns coming out of Nebraska. So the talent was there, and that's what the Broncos are doing. They were banking on talent. However, when you talk about availability concerns, that's what popped up.
It's hard to show the talent when you're only playing 10 games out of a possible, 21?
Yep.
It's really hard to highlight that.
That's exactly it. Last year, he played in 6 games. This year, he was healthy for the first 4 games of the season, but the production didn't follow. We're talking about half a sack this season for Randy Gregory, and we're talking about a guy that played 10 games, 3 total sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 tackles for a loss, and 9 quarterback hits in a guy who got a 5-year, $70 million contract. So why it makes sense is his production and value and place on the team was going down. We saw it on Sunday. He was benched for Nik Bonitto, for a young guy. And then also, what have we heard Sean Payton say all offseason? It doesn't matter how you got here, where you're drafted, how much money you're making. I'm going to play the best player. And we haven't seen a big movement toward that yet with Sean Payton yet. Marvin Mims, a guy that's not getting paid a ton, still only getting 25% of those reps. Like Alexis said, Now we have, this is the biggest message that Sean Payton has sent, and I do think it does send a big message to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I can't lie. I'm kind of jealous of that contract because he
$9.3
wasn't
million a
healthy,
sack?
getting all that money. I worked really hard, and I had to be healthy, and I had to be on point. Didn't get nearly that much. Got paid, but he definitely got a big paycheck for really not producing and hadn't really produced a lot up until then. It sucks to see guys go. I never want to see a guy sitting at home when he wants to play football. But I think just for this team and where they were and where they're trying to get to, I think it was a necessary move, the right move. And now we have to start talking about George Paton's decisions in free agency. Like, I don't know really who has really panned out yet. I think Russ is looking better. But besides that, I think a lot of things for free agent signings are still up in the air.
Oh, it's not looking good for George Paton. And so there's two ways to look at this for George Paton. One is, what an awful signing. And we can just stack it on top of other moves, which I'm sure we'll get to in the next few weeks, of just how tough it's been for George Paton getting here, drafting and signing free agents. But this is an awful move for George Paton. Now, you do give the Broncos some credit for saying, we realize this is an awful move, and we're just going to clean our hands right away. But I think there's another reason why why Sean Payton didn't have any reason or any issue making this move. Sean Payton wasn't a part of this signing. It's easy for Sean to wash his hands, but I still think it looks really bad on George.
Yeah, it's not a great look. Hopefully, I don't know what to do to move on, like with him and his, tenure as GM, but I know he was at the USC Colorado game. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if that's a good move,
Looking
a
at
good
Caleb
step.
Williams.
Who knows, man? I don't know.
Is there a seat right now in the NFL in a front office that's hotter than George Paton's?
Probably, you look at, no, probably not. Because even the Bears, I think they're more set with the scapegoat there. Maybe not even the scapegoat, but their head coach is the one that's going to be fired. I think their GM has a little bit more of a leash. So no, probably not.
Yeah, this move with Randy Gregory, and we were kind of talking about it before the show, it's interesting because when you're talking about the productivity of Randy Gregory, it wasn't there so much before the 5-year, $70 million contract. So what I'm trying to figure out is just what the thought process was of why you would lock in a guy who'd had availability issues when you kind of know that he's not going to be there for you day in and day out. So it puts a big fat question mark on why was this move even made. Do I think that they should have paid Randy Gregory in general? Yeah, I think his potential was worth money, but a 5-year, $70 million contract, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Now,
$28 million guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. And typically in a 5-year deal, you're guaranteeing 3 years. The Broncos only had to guarantee 2 years because of that availability question with Randy. But you look at what the Broncos are left with Randy's contract. The Broncos have $16 million in dead cap this year. Now, that's not as big of a deal because the Broncos were already going to be paying him and have a lot of that cap hit already on their books for this year, but a little bit more this year. $6.3 million in dead cap for 2024. The Broncos free up almost $10 million in cap space in 2024 with this move. I think we could have talked about this 4 weeks ago and said, yeah, Randy Gregory's not going to be on this team in 2024 unless he does something that he's never done. Have a 10-sack season, stay healthy for all 17 games, and produce and be that starter. So the fact that they made the move eventually, not a surprise, but the fact they did it now is Sean Payton sending that message.
And apparently they did try to trade him, but unfortunately there were no buyers.
Yeah, and not a surprise, because if someone were to have traded for him, they would have had to take on that contract.
This is why it's an even bigger miss, though.
100%, Alexis. If you have someone that 18 months ago you were willing to pay $70 million to and be your big time free agent signing, and 18 months later no one's willing to trade for him, even though the Broncos were going to have to eat a lot of the salary even if they traded him, and it was going to be a good deal for the next team that got him. That just shows how tough it is. And the Broncos have been working on a trade for over a week from what I've been told, and there was just absolutely nothing there.
Dang. Not even a 7th rounder, like nothing.
I know.
No.
Dang. That
Not
was
even
a lot
a
of
7th rounder, plus saying we'll pay for some of his contract.
Yeah. Dang, that's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. Some other things out there. Some people are putting out that Randy Gregory asked for his release yesterday, and the Broncos complied with that. I'm told that is not the truth. I'm told that the Broncos would not just give someone their release from asking it.
They still have to pay him. They're like, we'll let you go if you just restructure your contract right now, of course. But they wouldn't just give him that knowing they still have to pay him $16 million this year. No,
100%. The Broncos would rarely do that with anyone, even like Jamal Charles. You were on the team with Jamal Charles, right?
Yep.
And his role, we thought he was going to be a beast here, at least from the outside. And then his role was just non-existent the second half of the season. And there was a lot of talk like, do right by Jamal Charles, release him, even though it's not going to cost the Broncos any dead cap, really. Yeah. Release him, let him go sign with a playoff team. Maybe he goes back to the Chiefs. And the Broncos are like, hell no. We're not going to just help him out and help another team out. We gave him this contract. He's going to stay on our team. And then that is like multiplied by 100 when you're dealing with having to pay him $16 million this year right up front, $6 million next year in dead cap. So I've been told very sternly that was the Broncos did not just give in to a player because he wanted to be out. And if they did, I'm sure there might be a couple of other veterans on this team that are like,
see ya.
Wait, we're 1-3. This isn't how the season was going. Wait, I can get paid right now, and I can go cash a paycheck with someone else. Yeah,
Cortland Sutton should do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ask for my release. That's not how it works in the NFL.
Yeah, that's absurd. That would be like, hey, can you guys pay me? I'm not gonna come to work, but can you pay me? It's just that doesn't work anywhere, and the NFL is no different. Like that's not how that works. I think this is really just a really big example as to the amount of power that Sean Payton has within that building.
Yep.
Because I don't even think this was like a George Paton, like, hey, like we're not seeing the productivity out of Randy Gregory. Let's make him. This is Sean being like, I need to send a message to my team.
Yep.
So this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
In my opinion, I think that's how it went down.
No, well, 100%. I think that's exactly how it went down. And we talked about, I mentioned it, I think last week, how there was a national reporter that said, had a piece that was written and said, George Paton's going to have to make decisions at the trade deadline. George Paton's going to have to make decisions after the season. George Paton's going to have to make these. Yeah, and I brought up, like, the disconnect here between national people and know what's going on in Denver. This is all Sean Payton making these decisions.
These are the same people who are saying that Russell Wilson's the problem in Denver right now. So keep that in mind.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, Todd, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, assistant coaches, head coaches, GMs, anyone inside an NFL building, when it all boils down to it, at the end of the day, everyone puts themselves first. And I totally understand that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to realize that if George Paton was putting himself first in this, he does not cut Randy Gregory right now. Randy Gregory becomes a depth piece for the rest of the season. Then they move on from him after. So maybe props to George Paton for making this move, but I think it's more so we know who the boss is, and that's Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of understood the dynamic and how it shifted when Mr. Penner was in that press conference, you know, really to start the season. You kind of saw a shift there and kind of went from, George Paton will be making all the calls to, he'll help us make the call. So he kind of, tipped his hat and showed us that it was kind of no longer George Paton's, democracy show. Or I don't know what you want to call it, but it wasn't his show anymore. And I think it's a Sean Payton show. I don't think he'll be the GM and head coach like Bill Belichick, but he's going to have a say in anything the team does from here on out.
The Will Lutz signing is what really said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we knew.
Yep. And speaking of the Will Lutz signing, the Broncos had to sign Will Lutz because they moved on from Brandon McManus. That was Sean coming in and saying like, no, we're going to do this my way.
I don't need my NFLPA guy up in my
That's it. That's exactly it. This kind of follows that same direction. Sean's saying, no, we're done with you, and I don't care what it's going to cost, what it's going to look like. We're moving on, sending that message. And speaking of moving on, the Broncos have to move on without Randy Gregory this week as their season's still alive, but they have to get a win against the Jets. Let's break into how Jonathon Cooper and Nik Bonitto are going to do in these roles now and how the Broncos beat the Jets after I tell you about our friends over at Breckenridge Brewery. We got some Broncos Country Pale Ale on our set right now, and they are going to be flowing this weekend. Broncos, Jets, you're going to want some for this weekend, and you're going to need to pick up a 12-pack, maybe an 18-pack, because game on Sunday, then game on Thursday following right after. So head to any liquor store and you can get some Breck Brew, or if you want to find exactly where to get Breck Brew, go to breckbrew.com and look at their beer locator at the top of their website where it'll tell you where you can get every single beer of theirs. So check it out. It's the official beer of DNVR.
And I love the fall, but it definitely tells me that winter is coming. And if winter is coming, that means the weather is coming. And you need to make sure that you have a great roof over your head. So go check out our friends at Red Hawk Roofing. Denver's best roofers have joined the DNVR team. They have only quality materials. They have decades of experience, 24-hour availability, quick response time, huge DNVR supporters, so you know we love that. If you're looking for a new roof over your home or business, be sure to check out Red Hawk Roofing at redhawkroofing.com and tell them that DNVR sent you.
And really quick, one more thing that I thought of when I was processing this Randy Gregory news this morning. Todd, last week when you were breaking down the Dolphins-Broncos game, you kept pointing to, why is Randy Gregory just getting pushed around by wide receivers? Why is he allowing wide receivers just to block him over and over and over again? Surely he can't be coached that way. And then we had Brian Baldinger on. And who did he point to? Randy Gregory getting blocked over and over and over again. And so that led to his benching, what was a big reason to leading to his benching. And then on Sunday in Chicago, he was not the starter. And he wasn't just not the starter. At that position, the outside linebacker position, you can be in the very next play. And Sean Payton kind of minimizes when guys are benched. He said, there's rotations and stuff. Randy Gregory didn't have his helmet the first series. If it was just, it works out for Nik Bonitto to be in on this first play, Randy Gregory would have had his helmet. He didn't have his helmet the entire first series standing on the sideline. So it was pretty clear to him what was going on.
Yeah, and I know his energy, your energy speaks volumes. So I know that he was frustrated with that decision. And I don't know if not having your helmet, not being prepared is like the best example to show the team that, hey, I know I messed up. I know I'm not playing the way I need to, but I'm still your guy. I'm still ready to rock. I'm still ready to make plays for you. I still can be a leader on the sidelines. I think it just was all downhill kind of from that moment.
There were two benchings, and it wasn't so much, I don't know, like there were two that really caught my eye. And I know Isang Bassi did get in the game a little bit, but I mean, to have Jaquan McMillan in that game over Isang starting in the nickel position was really interesting to me. And it's just funny that, like, we're going to look at the Dolphins tape. Some guys blown coverage for Isang, obviously Randy getting pushed around. Like, the following week after the Bears game, both those guys get waived and released.
Yep.
It's clearly, like, whatever we see on Sunday, if there's a guy not in that game, like, there should be an asterisk on that guy. Watch him because he's probably going to get moved or something weird's going to happen with him. But it's just, I don't know. I just feel like the movements that are being made, especially after the Dolphins game, like if you want to look at that tape, like every guy on this Broncos defense could have been released.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why Isang, why Randy specifically after those games? Randy, I'm not sure, like, have we been able to see enough of him healthy to make this decision? And Isang, he was a bright spot throughout training camp. He had 3 games, 3 straight picks in the preseason. To me, he looked to not be as big of a liability as a lot of other guys on the field, and these two guys are gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, I don't know, spitballing. I'm thinking out loud here. I'm like, why them specifically? Randy, I understand a little bit more than E.
Yeah, and let's connect some dots here to wrap this conversation up with Pat Surtain was here yesterday, and he told us, no, Vance is putting us in the right spots. We're just not executing. Zach Allen told us that the day before, and Sean Payton is backing those guys' comments up by not firing Vance Joseph today or yesterday or Monday, but moving on from some players. Now, I'm certainly not going to take all blame off Vance Joseph, but this is Sean saying, okay, everyone's blaming Vance. It is not all on Vance. What these players are saying is true. It is on these players as well as Vance.
I tried to tell you guys, man. I try to be honest, man. I think we can see a lot from the outside looking in, and there's even more probably that we don't know. Like, we don't know every specific coverage that's on Sunday. So when you see a guy wide open, it may look like, a safety blew the coverage, but it could be that nickel defender that blew the coverage. So they see it more than we do. And like I said, I think the advance is putting them in a great position to do their job and win. They're just not executing. And I think that the release of these guys sets a precedent. Like, hey, you better execute or you can be next. And so I hope guys come ready to play this Sunday. It's a big game against the Jets. A lot of talk around it because of, things that transpired all off season. But come ready to play, because Monday we could be looking at more waves and trades and who knows.
Lastly, just before I know we need to move on, Tyson K here probably had negative attitudes and were causing problems in the locker room. I don't know so much about Randy and his attitude, but somebody who I know well and I know people in the building really love and respect is Isang Bassi. Yeah. That guy did not have a negative attitude. Mm-hmm. Like, that was it's quintessential player that you want on your roster in terms of attitude and the effort that he put in. That was a guy who could not have had a better attitude. And I know Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach, is going to miss having a guy like that in his room, because he was, everything to that room.
100%. And one more thing, news coming down right now that the Broncos are activating Baron Browning off the PUP list. So, this just opens a spot for him right there. It is not a guarantee that he plays this week. In fact, he might need a week or two to come back. But you talk about the Broncos filling a Randy Gregory spot. Boom.
They just did.
There you go. Nik Bonitto, Jonathon Cooper are definitely the starters, but it wouldn't be a surprise if Baron Browning in a couple of weeks plays well enough to earn that spot. So Broncos already have their replacement for Randy Gregory. Didn't take long. And we can't take long talking about this Jets-Broncos game because, man, this is going to be juicy. And before we dive into the juice of this game, let's talk about how the Broncos win this game and jump into Whiteboard Wednesday here and talk about the keys for the Broncos getting a dub against the Jets. First key for the Broncos whiteboard is deck the hall. And I'm talking about Breece Hall. Speaking of news coming out, the Jets said this morning that there are going to be no limitations for Breece Hall anymore. So the Broncos are going to get a full dose of Breece Hall, especially because Dalvin Cook is no good. He's averaging 2.5 yards per carry. So they want to give Breece Hall, especially with Zach Wilson as their quarterback, at the ball as much as possible. In their one win, the Jets' one win, week 1, Breece Hall had 10 carries for 127 yards and 20 receiving yards. He was probably the reason that they were able to stay in that game with Zach Wilson coming in off the bench and playing. In their 3 losses, Breece Hall has 9 rushing yards, 18 rushing yards, and 56 rushing yards. And the 56 rushing yards was last week and the closest game that they've had. So Breece Hall rushing yards, 100%. Correlates with how the Jets do. So Broncos contain him. You can hold him to 60 yards, probably even 80 yards and still win this game. Just don't let him go for over 100 yards and you should win this game. And then just to correlate to that, Zach Wilson, the only time that they've won, he threw 21 passes. Every other game, he's thrown an average of 34 passes. So again, they're going to try to win this game with Breece Hall. Don't let him do it.
Okay.
I think that's key because the Broncos really haven't stopped the run all that well this season, whether it was against the Miami Dolphins or the Chicago Bears. Chicago really had some open running lanes and ran the ball really well against them, and we all know what the Dolphins did. So this is a big key for them. Hopefully Josie is back because he's a good run stopper for them. But I agree, this is a huge key.
Yeah, let's hit our next key for this game. The Broncos need to... dial it up for us. Don't hack it.
Yeah, basically, you don't need to play like Nathaniel Hackett. I think we need to go out there and play Sean Payton's brand of football. Don't let Hackett come in here and embarrass us, please, because we will not hear the end of it. All the smash, all the trash we talked throughout the offseason. I'm backing it up. I'm a Broncos fan. I'm rocking with Sean. But as a fan and a former player, I need you guys to step up and do not let Nathaniel Hackett walk out here with a win because we will not hear the end of it.
Count down that play clock, baby. Let's
Exactly.
Oh, it's going to be a blast, and we're going to really dive into the drama tomorrow. Let's get to our next whiteboard.
Yeah, here's over here.
Yeah,
he needs to be over
he's
here.
Running around here. You here, hit it for us. What we need next. Taking candy from a baby.
Taking candy from a baby, because babyface Zach Wilson, he has struggled mightily this season. And of course, the Broncos defense, they absolutely have to capitalize on that. We did see a flash of who Zach Wilson could be Sunday night against the Chiefs, but I think overall, I mean, the fumbled snap says it all. And that's a situation where this week, when Zach Wilson gives this team an opportunity to make a big play, cause a turnover, they absolutely need to take advantage of that and get the ball back for this offense, because the offense is moving pretty well. So the more possessions for Russell Wilson and these guys, the better. So defense needs to get out there, do their job, and take candy from babyface Zach Wilson.
I love that. I love that. Let's hit the next one, which I think goes along with this. No presents for Hackett. The Broncos will win this game if they don't lose this game. Now, it may sound ridiculous, but this game, it's not like the Chiefs, where next week when the Broncos are playing the Chiefs, the Broncos will have to do things to win that game. They will have to hit big plays. They will have to hit deep shots. They will have to pick off Patrick Mahomes and make some plays themselves. If the Broncos don't lose this game by turning the ball over and over and over and over and over, that's 4 overs.
Yeah.
If they don't turn the ball over 4 times, they really should win this game, because the Jets only win this season. You guys remember it? Josh Allen was just giving candy to the Jets on defense. He was just literally lobbing up passes. He threw 3 interceptions to the same player and also had a fumble in that game. He was just giving them the ball. And that led to the Jets' only win. Broncos are going to have to do something similar like that to lose to the Jets this week, because in their other games, they had 0 turnovers, or the Jets had 0 takeaways against the Cowboys and the Patriots, their 2 biggest losses of the season.
3 picks that game, too.
Yeah, exactly. They had 2 turnovers against the Chiefs, and that's why they were able to keep it close with the Chiefs, is because of those. So just don't turn the ball over an excessive amount, and you should be okay in this game.
Yeah, this is a really good defense, man. We got to stay on point and keeping track of the ball. You know what it is. We talked about the percentages when you lose the turnover battle. We cannot lose the turnover battle this week.
Yep, absolutely. Next one, let's hit it. Rumble, young man, rumble.
This is a quote from the great Muhammad Ali.
It would have sounded way cooler if Todd said it.
Todd said it.
It's all good. No, he did a good job. No, I'm not going to say it again. I think Zach did a good job. You know?
Thank you,
Shout out
Todd.
to Zach. Yeah, this is talking about Jaleel McLaughlin and Marvin Mims. I think it's on them. They're the bright, shining spots of our team right now, and we're winning games because of them. I had some conversations about Russell Wilson with people, and I think he's doing a great job, but we're not losing games because of Russell Wilson, but we're also not winning games because of Russell Wilson. But we are winning games because of these 2 young guys, and we need to find more ways to get them the ball, get them out in space, and allow them to run and rumble. Young man, rumble. Do your thing, boys.
I love it.
He did say it. I'm so glad he said it.
Snuck it in there.
I'm so glad he said it.
And final key here for the Broncos is Money McLaughlin.
Yeah, to really, bounce off of what Todd just said. Money McLaughlin. I mean, I just think this Money Mac would be a great nickname for Jaleel McLaughlin, because he is money, and I think he will be this Sunday. Up against Gang Green, they do have a really good run defense. They've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown this season, but I think we can all agree Jaleel McLaughlin is absolutely electric. I really love what Todd said earlier this week. The way that he can start and stop makes him so fun to watch. He, of course, forced 6 missed tackles on just 7 rushing attempts against the Bears, over 100 yards from scrimmage, including 72 rushing, 32 receiving. I just think the more we see Jaleel McLaughlin on the field, the better this team is. And I agree with you also with Marvin Mims. So, yeah, Money Mac. Feed Jaleel. Let's go.
More Marvin, more
Money Mac.
Money Mac. We need more young guys, and I certainly think that's what the Broncos are going to do. And speaking of Jaleel, we're going to follow Javonte Williams' progress all throughout this week, because there's a chance that he doesn't play. He's probably not going to miss extended time, but a guy that's been dealing with an injury for the past year now has another one. Maybe he doesn't heal as quick and isn't back this next week. And if he's not, I wouldn't be surprised if Jaleel is the Broncos' starting running back. And speaking of playing games, if you want to play games, check out our friends over at Splash Sports, where they have some awesome contests going on. and they have the weekly Pick X contest for everyone to participate for real money. Go to splashsports.com/DNVR. We also have the link in our description, and it's on the screen right now if you're tuning in via YouTube. You deposit cash and enter DNVR's weekly Pick X contest for just $20, and the more people who enter the league, the bigger the prizes are, and there are some huge prizes. So check out splashsports.com/DNVR to get in on the winning. And we'll have different contests coming out, so we're stoked to compete with you and against all of you guys, so make sure to check it out. Click that link in our description.
And I would like to give a shout out to Fubo TV, given the fact that I was feeling a little under the weather on Sunday. I wasn't able to make it here to watch the game at the DNVR Bar, and thanks to Fubo, I was able to watch at home because I have officially cut the cord. I've been using Fubo because I need to watch the Nuggets, I need to watch the Avs, and they are all on Fubo TV. So if you guys already know this, 140 live channels of sports, shows, movies, and news. You can stream live from any device that you have. Watch the most Colorado sports for the lowest price, and you could start watching immediately with a free trial. There is no contract. I love that. No cable, which I absolutely love. No hassle. All you have to do is sign up and start watching. Over 1,000 hours of cloud DNVR included at no extra charge. Guys, I think the Pac-12 network is something that you can watch. So this Saturday, CU versus ASU, you need Fubo TV. Download it to watch your Buffs get a big win over ASU.
Did you guys hear that little
Fubo
chime a couple seconds ago?
Yeah.
That's our guy, Brian Baldinger, joining the show. We love this segment. And Brian, I mean, you're coming in off some breaking news for the Broncos this morning. Want to get your reaction to the Broncos, who signed Randy Gregory to a 5-year, $70 million contract just 18 months ago, releasing him today. What type of message does this send to the team?
Well, that wasn't, Sean Payton signing. That's Sean Payton looking at and evaluating this roster, going, okay, we've got the 32nd ranked defense in football. We couldn't stop Justin Fields in the first half. We can't get to the quarterback. And Randy Gregory is supposed to be this high-priced ticket. Look, Sean Payton watched Cam Jordan line up and beat every single tackle in this league, for the last 12 years. He knows what a great defensive end looks like. Randy Gregory couldn't beat a rookie tackle last week. He couldn't beat a backup left tackle last week. You go back to the week before against Miami. Austin Jackson is an average right tackle in this business. He gets covered up because the coach is really smart. He couldn't beat any of those guys. So if you're not winning and you're not producing and you're from another regime, you send the message. Like, it could be the next person from the former regime, right, that isn't producing. Like, they'll show him the door. Sean Payton has no problem cutting ties with players that just don't fit what he's looking for.
I love that. I feel like that's exactly what Sean needs to do. Cut everybody who's not working out to your scheme. I saw that your breakdown of Jaleel McLaughlin's touchdown, his screen. I thought it was very insightful, and I love the way that you pointed out Quinn Miners. The offensive line, I feel like, played much better that game and was able to get out and block people in space for the running backs to create more offense. I wanted you to just talk a little bit about what you saw from the offensive line and how much better they looked last week as opposed to other weeks.
Well, I mean, honestly, the only worst defense compared to Denver's at this point, in large part because of what happened in Miami or Chicago. I mean, Chicago, they made no sense what they were doing. Now, they blitzed a lot last week because the week before against Kansas City, they just sat there in these zones and Pat Mahomes just cut them up. So they blitzed a lot more. They played a lot harder. They did a few things schematically. But, look, I've been watching Jaleel since training camp, honestly. And sometimes training camp, you can be fooled. You can go, okay, it's preseason. Who's out there? Who's he beat? But you can't deny his foot quickness and his vision. And, not everybody can catch a little 3-count screen and take it to the house. Christian McCaffrey could do it. Not everybody can do it. And he did that. And then he made a number of runs. Like, he looked like the only explosive player they had for the first 3 quarters of that game. And that's not to knock Samaje or anybody else. Yeah. Like, he just looks like he needs more touches. But the screen, that's a great finish. It's a great finish. You out there. Quinn did a good job getting out front, getting downfield. He ran right behind Highway 77 right there. That was a nice play.
Yeah, I think from the fan perspective here in Denver, after that game, obviously we're high on Jaleel McLaughlin. We're high on Marvin Mims. But here in Denver, we're feeling some lows. Like, okay, we wanted to win that game, but they didn't look good in the first half and XYZ. From the national perspective, like, what is the reaction to the Broncos beating the Bears? Because here in Denver, and Sean Payton's reaction was like, who cares? We should have beat them by a lot more, and we should be a better team overall.
I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, honestly, but like, there's nothing like getting on a plane ride and going home with the win.
Yeah.
Like you put up 17 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, you can look at it a lot of ways. Like, how were we down? What was it, 28-7, whatever it was. Like, how were we down like that? But we came back. So, and you did it with a lot of young guys and been doing it with young guys. Maybe that's the future. Marvin Mims been doing it now 2 weeks in a row. Jaleel got his big opportunity last week, and he produced. Like, I don't know. Like, I think those kids have opened Sean Payton's eyes, period. And I think you're going to see a lot more of them. So, look, it's a win. They're not the worst team in the league. After they probably felt that way on the ride home from Miami, but that's a good feeling winning that game.
Yeah, and this next game coming up for the Broncos has all the juice for off-field reasons. Broncos-Jets playing. I know you're close to the Jets organization. What's this game like for Nathaniel Hackett and the Jets? Because Sean Payton in training camp not only called out Nathaniel Hackett, but he also called out the Jets organization for doing hard knocks, even though that wasn't their choice to do. They were forced on that. But what's the vibe for the Jets going into this game?
Well, it's motivation. It's straight motivation, And look, they need a win. They've lost 3 in a row. They had a chance to beat the world champions last week. They couldn't finish it. They looked better last week than they did the week before against the Patriots. So, I think they're going to start the same offensive line for the 3rd week in a row for probably the first time in years. So like the quarterback made some plays that he hadn't made, and he, outside of the fumble, took care of the ball. Look, what Sean said, he said, and they can use it any way they want. It really isn't going to matter until you get on the field. And nobody's going to play harder because Sean Payton said something about their offense coordinator. And so it's really about preparation this week. I mean, the Jets beat them last year. It came down to final throws, and Sauce Gardner was just better than Cortland Sutton. At the very end of that game, I'm sure everybody's watching those plays all over again. And it might come down to those kind of throws at the end this year with Russell Wilson and Marvin Mims or Cortland, whoever. So, or Brandon Johnson, whoever it might be. So I think, it'll get talked about. It's, the NFL is awesome at, they don't have to write any storylines. They create themselves. This got started back in July. That's fine. I've talked to Nathaniel Hackett about it. One day he'll come clean about his experience in Denver, but it's not the time. It's not the place. And so it wasn't just his doing. It was, it was an entire organization failure last year. Sean's got to clean it up, and I'm sure that was part of it, part of him saying that. It's time to clean this mess up. You can't put it on the doorstep of Nathaniel Hackett. But, like everyone's going to talk about it. Those sound bites we played all week long, all the pregame shows on Sunday. But at the end of the day, the players got to kind of block it all out, and they got to find both teams desperately need a win and feel like they can win the game.
Yeah, I think this is a great matchup for the Broncos right now. This is a really good defense that they're going up against the offense that's, trying to put things together and looking better week in and week out. You talked about Cortland and Sauce. I think this is a huge matchup, not only for the team, but for Cortland. I think this is a way for him to show that he can be an elite wide receiver in the NFL and really be able to make plays. Are there any other matchups in this game that you're excited to see and guys that you really feel like need to compete in order to help their team win?
Well, the Jets are, Jets and really all the best defenses in the NFL right now. And I mean, it's in light of, Randy Gregory, getting shown the door today. Honestly, the best defenses are all built around a front four and where all the resources go there. And the Jets have spent the last 2 number 1 draft picks on defensive ends, free agencies, Carl Lawson, Quentin Williams just got a $100 million contract this year. I mean, all the resources are in their front. And so if you ask me what's the next matchup, I go, you got to handle Quentin Williams. I mean, Chris Jones can do it. Aaron Donald can do it. Quentin Williams can do it. Jeffrey Simmons. There's 6 guys in this league that can literally dominate a game from the interior. And so if you allow yourself to be one-on-one, if Cushenberry or Quinn, or like you pick a guy. If they're one-on-one with Quinn and Williams, it's a handful. Not many guys can handle him. He's powerful, he's slippery, and he plays hard. And he's sick of losing. So that'd be one matchup for sure. And then like whoever, whether they put Surtain on Garrett Wilson, like I don't know if he'll travel, but Garrett's their best offensive player. And so the ball's going to him. Third down, red zone, they need a touchdown, go balls, they're going to Garrett. Like he's an elite player. But so is Surtain. So maybe this is a week where you see that kind of a matchup. I mean, I'd pay StubHub, inflated prices to go watch that matchup.
Speaking of Garrett Wilson and the Jets offense, Zach Wilson, he's obviously coming off a great game. He went, 28 for 39, 245 yards, 2 touchdowns in a game which many people are saying, the Jets were absolutely robbed in that game. Did Zach Wilson finally hit his stride with Nathaniel Hackett, or was that just kind of an outlier because, the Chiefs' minds are just flooded with Taylor Swift songs right now?
I don't think the defense is thinking about, what Taylor Swift's doing up in her box. That's a great, I thought the Chiefs were the best defense in football going into that game.
For sure.
Now, they're still very good. I mean, their 2 corners can run with anybody. They're built well, and they got a great coordinator. I mean, the guy's won 3 Super Bowls now as a defensive coordinator, but Steve Spagnuolo. But I think that you have to. I think Zach Wilson. All you had to do is look at his teammates at the end of that game. If anybody thought that this locker room was splintered in New York and the players are like, go trade for Kirk Cousins, do something crazy. Right. The players had his back, and that can only build confidence with him. And be honest with you, I like Nathaniel Hackett. I don't, whatever happened in Denver happened, but I like him. I've known him a long time. I think he's a good teacher. Everybody has to execute whatever the plan is, whatever the plays are. It's up to the players. The coach can only call the plays, put the design together. But I believe that, Zach Wilson, I was as frustrated with him as anybody else, any fan in New York. But he showed me a lot last week. And this game is all about building kids' confidence. And when they get confidence sometimes, they play even beyond their talent level. So who knows? I think he's going to hit it pretty confident this week. But maybe that's up to Denver to take it out of him.
So, Baldy, that leads into my next question perfectly. 2 struggling units through this season. The Jets offense, they did pick up a little steam, but still a struggling unit. Going up against the Broncos defense, and, you said it, the worst defense in the NFL in terms of points per game. They made Justin Fields look great last week, specifically in the first half. Who has the advantage between these 2 groups that are going up against each other?
I always thought that it's a hard place to play in Denver. I played up there in my career 7 times. I didn't win one stinking game. I always thought it was just a hard place to play. So, but that's not, that's kind of a mental thing. I don't know where the Jets are traveling, whatever. But I think right now, the Denver's defense, okay, they pitched a shutout in the 4th quarter. Okay, they played much better. Nik Bonitto got 1, scored 1. Maybe it's time, some of these young kids that are playing out there right now, maybe it's time just to grow up and be NFL players and realize that, the defense has got to make plays in this business. They got to find a way to do it. Off bootlegs, interceptions, tip balls, whatever it is. Not going to be good to see them knock the ball loose, for crying out loud. So those kind of things, it's on the defense. So I think it's up to the Denver's defense to show up and see if they can build off what they did in the second half last week. I
love that. Final question for you. Does Denver's defense show up? Do the Broncos get the win over the Jets here?
I'm not good at the prediction game. I'm really not. But I'll say this. I think, because of what Sean said this summer, this game is going to have a lot of emotion to it. You're going to see Jet players saying things on the sideline to Sean. Sean's probably going to give it right back to him, sideline stuff. It's going to be chippy. I expect this game to be highly intense. It's not going to be 2 1-3 teams going at it. I think it's going to be played at a much higher intensity level. And so usually in those kind of games, it's who can actually stay calm in the storm of all that comes out to be the winner.
I love it. I love it. We're looking forward to this game. We're looking forward to talking to you next week when the Broncos have a short week playing the Chiefs. Thanks so much for your awesome insight, Brian.
Don't ask me how many games in a row the Broncos have lost to the Chiefs. All right, I don't want to say that.
We've lost count.
Oh, we know all too well.
This week. All right, yeah. All
Thanks,
right,
Baldy.
Talk next week.
Oh, man. Awesome insight. I mean, we get some Jaleel McLaughlin, Christian McCaffrey comparisons. Great answers and insight from our guy, Brian Baldinger. And speaking of great insight, let's talk to our listeners after I tell you about our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code DNVR over at DraftKings Sportsbook to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet over at DraftKings Sportsbook after you use the code DNVR when you sign up. DraftKings is giving you $200 in bonus bets. Now's a great time to do it. College football all day Saturday, NFL all day Sunday. And you can start this. You can get those bets by betting on the Commanders and Bears tomorrow. What a terrible Thursday night football game. In fact, I think it's the second year in a row that we've got Commanders-Bears on Thursday night football. So have we moved into that point of the season where now they're just putting bad games on Thursday night football?
I mean, no, because then I was going to say, then we should have been on Thursday night football last week because Broncos and Bears was about as bad as it was going to be. But yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So you can get $200 in bonus bets by betting on that game. So go to the App Store, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and use that code DNVR. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800 or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensing partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsibly gamble resources. Bonus bets expire after 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
It's always my favorite part of the pod when you rattle those off.
Made it through. And we made it through to the comment section. Do we have any super chats we need to get to?
Yeah.
We got a couple here. First one coming in from Mile High Sign says, so George Paton didn't sign Vaughn when he wanted to come back and instead signed Gregory. What the heck? This is why you keep your legends. Seat just got hotter, George. I think there's no doubt about the seat getting hotter and hotter. And Alexis, I think you asked the right question. Does George have the hottest seat in terms of front office people?
Yeah, I think he might at this point. When you just think of some of the moves that have been made, and I want to talk about the Caleb Williams thing really quick too. Speaking of George Paton and him being out at the CU USC game the other day, like the idea that one player can fix an organization, like as if Caleb Williams is the answer, like the lack of assets that this team has right now in terms of draft picks and capital and XYZ, like it just begs the question of like, why even look for Caleb Williams? Because you need so many other pieces that we've seen week in and week out that like, I don't even know why we're even discussing that. But back to this, yeah, I think George Paton is on the hot seat, which sucks because I love George. George is one of the coolest guys I've ever met, and I know he has such an amazing football mind, but just some of these decisions, from spending as much money as we did on Russell Wilson and not bringing back Vaughn and trading Brad, and I don't know.
Yep. Lot of tough decisions. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett was 100% a George Paton decision.
Yeah.
Joe Ellis, who was also the other leader of the team when they hired Nathaniel Hackett, he knew that the team was going to be sold, so he said, I'm staying out of this. George, this is all on you, and we know how that went down. So
that post-game or that
post-season
press conference after the firing of Nathaniel Hackett said everything, kind of like what you talked about earlier with Greg Penner. The way that Greg Penner took over that press conference and George just kind of sat there fairly quietly. It just said everything about the direction the team was heading in and who was really in charge. So I think once your GM loses the vast majority of his power, I don't know what's next other than to move on.
Yeah, and so we have some people saying, well, George is a great evaluator of talent, which is true. Can he just become like the assistant GM? No, that's not how it works. When you are fired, you're fired. You're not demoted. I don't know if I've ever seen it happen, and that's just not how it works.
We almost saw it a little bit with Fangio possibly coming back this year.
Yeah, but even he left though.
But he left.
Yeah,
and then coming back, that would have been. I mean, we've seen it with VJ.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you guys like that?
Yeah, and people don't like it a lot. And the last super chat coming in from the Blind Swordsman says, Frank Clark should be next so he can be a Swiftie. I'll tell you what, this is not, if this season or certain players continue to play the way they're playing, this won't be the last move that the Broncos made. Sean Payton isn't just going to make one move and then be like, nope, I've sent a message. He's not afraid to continue to make moves. And I think Frank Clark is someone that you can point to and say, maybe that's a guy, because the Broncos also have Jonathon Cooper on the team right now, who is a young outside linebacker. Frank Clark, if he's going to be a backup outside linebacker getting paid $5.5 million, and he doesn't like his role, and he creates issues behind the scenes. He hasn't done that yet, but if that happens because he's upset with his role, Broncos will absolutely move on from him.
Yeah, I think no matter what, this Broncos roster will look a lot differently next year. Even if they get on a hot streak, win 5 of the last 6 games, I think no matter what, you're going to see a lot of people leave this team, and it'll be a fresh start next year no matter what.
I have a style question for you, Todd. Do you like the Frank Clark pearls, like the diamond pearl necklace?
I'm not a big fan of the pearls. Like, that's just not my thing. I think they started with Chanel. Like, Chanel has pearls all in their jewelry, and I think a lot of guys are biting that. But I'm not a guy that wears pearls. I like diamonds and maybe even different, like, because for the sapphire, different stones in there. I'm not a big pearl guy, though.
Okay. I was just curious.
I love that. That's the type of insight we need. We actually have another super chat coming in from Josiah. Says, if we lose this week, where does that leave us? Back into rebuild mode? We will quickly know where this team's going, because there's going to be no time for conversation about rebuilding next week, because it's all right on to Kansas City. If in the next 8 days the Broncos lose 2 games and they're sitting at 1-5, it's going to be very clear where the Broncos are going. And there's really no scenario in my mind where the Broncos lose to the Jets at home and on a short week travel to Kansas City and beat Kansas City. Yeah. So if the Broncos lose to the Jets in 4 days after that, we're going to be talking about a 1-5 team.
Yeah, I think we are rebuilding. I think we've been rebuilding. I think every team in the league that's not a top 10 team is building to some extent. So I think ever since Peyton Manning has left, I think we've been in a rebuilding state, and we're just still in it now.
And Todd just said that. He was like, this team's going to look a lot different next year. Yeah, that's a rebuild.
Yeah, it certainly will, especially after the Broncos miss the playoffs, if that's what they do. You hear, what are you saying? Oh, he's got some DMs for me. Sliding into my DMs is you here. And we have some super chats from yesterday as well. It's not sliding into my DMs like I was thinking.
No, I was gonna ask. I know like you hear is married, but I would love to hear his plan for sliding in DMs.
Here you want to comment? You here?
I'm getting in trouble if I say anything. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say, as the female on the set, shut up, you hear? Don't say anything.
So we didn't get to all the super chats yesterday, and I apologize for that. But when we have Pat on and some other guests, we might not be able to get to all the comments on the website or even all of the super chats, but we want to make sure that we got to them today. And the first one from yesterday coming in from Kyle, and it's probably these are probably toward Pat, but we're still going to read them anyway. It says, hey guys, headed to Denver from the state of Maine this weekend. It's my first Broncos game. Been a fan for 28 years. Huge PS2 fan here. I already know this, but it's your time to show Sauce your number one. And I can't wait for that. It's there's so many fun storylines in this game that are getting overshadowed by some other bigger storylines.
Fiasco.
Yeah, the fiasco, as Sean put it. And next one coming in from Danny, who says, Sauce who? Great win. Been a Broncos fan since the days of Lionel Taylor and McDaniel. Wahoo McDaniel says, please don't ever tank. What's up with Gregory? Well, that question was asked yesterday. Pretty impressive
smart man right there.
Insight there, yeah.
Go buy a lottery ticket right
Got
now.
an immediate answer.
You certainly did. And Broker comes in and says, Mr. PS2, why aren't you playing more man-on-man with teams number one? As a fan, it's annoying to see you lined up on the other side of the field without the opponent's number one. Will you guys play more man coverage versus the soft zone that's failing? Pat probably wouldn't have answered that question because he doesn't want to give anything away. But I'll tell you what, when Pat was sitting in your seat yesterday, Todd, he said in the second half, we moved to more man and a lot more man, and a smile came over his face. If Pat can decide what the Broncos do, it's going to be more man.
Yeah, he definitely wants to play man-to-man. And it's tough because I would like to see him travel more too. But it's tough. It's also tough when you pick man because not only Pat has to play man, but everybody across the board has to play man. And you have to make sure that those matchups all work out for you as a defense. So I think that's why they're doing a lot of mixing man and zone, because zone's usually easier, especially for cornerbacks and safety. So you got to be able to mix it in.
Yeah, Pat man-to-man also means Damari Mathis is man-to-man. So
Wow.
just saying.
That's fair. That's fair. Dylan Smith says, I'm just getting back from serving deployment and tried to get to the Chicago game. I will get to meet y'all one day. Keep doing great things, Pat. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for your service. Welcome home, and we can't wait to meet you soon as well. All right, that's going to do it for Super Chats. We do have 2 questions on the website. First one coming in from Jersey Broncos says, I copied this from Monday's podcast and says, I was actually starting to believe I would sit in traffic leaving MetLife Stadium at midnight with a smile on my face after watching Zach Wilson outplay Patrick Mahomes. Then they pull a typical Jets move and rip the fans' hearts out. Refs' conspiracy theories acceptable as well. Either way, no games left on our schedule should be considered favorites. The Jets' defense looks legit, and our defense made Justin Fields look like Mahomes. The defense finally stepped out to close out the game strong, but this team hasn't earned much faith from me. They need to keep showing it. The wife and I really wish we could have made it to the Denver game for the Jets this year. To anyone thinking about it, DNVR Tailgate is the way to go. Love all the new additions to the pod. Alexis, Jimmy Palmtree's PS2, random RK sightings, and Super Bowl champ Todd Davis. The Broncos may be a borderline laughingstock of the NFL, but DNVR is a championship caliber pod. Much love from Jersey.
What a nice guy.
Yeah, love that. Love Jersey Bronco. Yeah, I mean, if the Broncos in back-to-back weeks make Justin Fields look like an MVP guy and Zach Wilson look like an MVP quarterback, I'm going to be so concerned for what Thursday night against Patrick Mahomes looks like.
Like an actual MVP quarterback.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think, football is at least 80-85% mental. Like, I think right now Zach Wilson feels like, going up against the Chiefs defense, I did pretty good, made some mistakes towards the end, but he looks at our defense as an opportunity for him to really put his best foot forward. So we got to come to play because he's going to be confident coming in. Maybe that confidence leads him to make some mistakes, but he's going to feel like he can move the ball on our defense, and it's on our defense to show him that they can.
Yeah, Zach Wilson is absolutely licking his chops this week heading into this game. And as long as he's not feeling himself in the first half like Justin Fields was, I mean, that confidence like we saw Sunday night against the Chiefs can do wonders for someone. We saw it Sunday afternoon with Justin Fields. Like, absolutely cannot let him get into any kind of rhythm. Also interesting, though, it's worth noting that only one of his interceptions thrown this year was when he was under pressure.
Zach?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he was blitzed, he's only thrown 1 pick.
Wow, that is fascinating. I wouldn't expect that from him.
From a young guy, usually when they're under pressure, you see them make more mistakes. But no, it's when he's untouched. It's a clean pocket.
And how about the crowd getting into this too? Zach Wilson was at home last week and a very comfortable environment for him. Now, put the pressure on him. The crowd, get loud, be behind that defense. As Brian said, and Todd, from playing here so many times, this is a tough place to play, especially when the crowd is in it. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen the crowd that into it. And that's not the crowd's fault. It's because the Broncos haven't been showing up for a while. But this is a game that I think has a lot of juice, and I do think the crowd's going to bring it.
I cannot wait.
And final comment coming in from The Count, who says, in this copycat league, I don't understand why more teams don't use more motion packages, giving fast wide receivers a chance to be nearing full speed by the time the rock is snapped. And I don't know why this hasn't been a thing for as long as the next generation speed stats have been available. Imagine Marvin Mims getting a few extra steps before the defender. Is this hard to defend, Todd? What are the downfalls to adding more motion? Love, The Count.
I think it's really hard to defend, and I agree that more people should put it in, especially for guys like Marvin Mims. For our offense, I don't know if there is much downside. I think guys have to understand the snap count and understand when guys are moving and when they can take off. But besides that, I think it's just good all the way around for the offense, just like that tush-push for the Eagles. I don't understand why every team doesn't do that. I don't see any downside to that for the offense. So, they definitely should increase their motion game.
How about the tush push? This weekend, 4 teams tried it. Did you see all 4 teams that did it?
I feel like they just didn't They didn't really try. They just thought that they could line up and do it, but I didn't see the effort.
It looked completely different. It did not look like they were just copying the Eagles exactly. It looked like they were trying to, but they didn't practice it enough because only the Eagles were successful in the tush push. And when they do it, it just looks so good. It looks so unstoppable. It's like, why doesn't every team do it? Well, the other 3 teams weren't as good, but I would like to see the Broncos try it once. And that's just all about leverage. And want to.
And effort, absolutely.
And this Broncos offensive line, they might not be that good at pass protection, but they're here to be good in the run game and getting that initial push and getting low. So I'd love to see Ben Powers and Quinn Meinerz show the power that they have up front and try that with Russ.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm team tush push, so let's go. Why not?
And
should we try it this week?
Yes.
4th and 1 for sure.
Oh man, I'd love it. And let's go. We got to go to the Broncos facility. Talk to Sean Payton about this move of moving on from Randy Gregory. So stay tuned to thednvr.com. Stay tuned to DNVR_Broncos on Twitter. Follow Alexis, Todd, and myself on Twitter as well for all the latest updates. And we're gonna be back to break down the juice, to squeeze all the juice out of this game. Tomorrow's podcast, 11 a.m. Thank you so much for all rolling with us today.
We all silly like the mayor.